Right. So good morning, everybody. Happy to be here. When Jennifer and Annie asked me to come speak, it was a few months ago, and I was like, yeah, let me come and talk about C3. Let me talk about what's happening at the state level around college and career readiness. Well, I shared that with a colleague, some of you may know, Elizabeth Cox-Brand with the Oregon Community College Association. I said, hey, I've been asked to go talk about C3. She's like, what are you going to talk about? I said, really? Thanks for the vote of confidence, Elizabeth. And really her meaning was that C3 is in its infancy. It's a couple years old, and I'm going to talk more about what that looks like. But she said, do we have enough content? Do we have enough information? I said, yeah, I think so. She said, well, don't worry about it. They're going to all be getting coffee and registering and looking at their bios and the agenda, and they're not going to pay attention to you anyway. So I was like, well, thanks, Elizabeth. That's great. But I thought about that, and I thought, okay, I'm going to take that as a challenge. Thinking about who's in the room today, what information can I share with you that's happening at a statewide level, the resources and tools that are available to you, the work that's happening around collaboration and mentoring and community across the state, about our regional achievement collaboratives. So what do I know that you can walk away from today and have something in your wheelhouse that you can use in your programs? So I took it as a challenge. Didn't let her lack of confidence, no, it wasn't lack of confidence, but didn't let that sway me. So today I'm really here to talk about resources and tools around college and career readiness, around mentoring, how you can access those, why they might be important to you, and not only that, but what do you have to share with the work that's happening around the state? You're all the experts in career development. We, working for state agencies, working for nonprofit organizations, and different organizations in Oregon, we're able to pull resources together, create a place that people can go. We're hoping for like a one-stop shop that has resources and materials and tools and webinars and trainings, offering convenings around college and career readiness, around mentoring, but relying on the people that are actually doing the work and hearing from our students and families about what is needed in that. So that is what I'm here to talk about today. So I have a clicker too. All these gadgets. So Jennifer and Annie, they talked a little bit about my experience. So one of the reasons that they asked me to come talk today is because of the experience that I had with the Aspire mentoring program and then the work around college and career readiness. So for those of you who don't know, the Aspire program is the state's mentoring program that started in high schools traditionally. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Aspire because Gary and Kristen will be talking about Aspire after lunch today. But I started with the program in 2004, and I was lucky enough to inherit this AmeriCorps grant, where these AmeriCorps members were working anywhere from 20 to 40 hours a week, which honestly is kind of unheard of in a high school capacity. So they were able to focus on this Aspire mentoring program, one-on-one mentoring, mainly focused on seniors. But we needed to create volunteer management pieces. So how do we recruit our volunteers to be our mentors? How do we train them? And most importantly, how do we then continue to keep them engaged, to retain them, to want to continue coming back? And Aspire has a pretty high retention rate of our volunteers. It's about it was last I knew, it was at 76%. So I think they did a pretty good job of creating the system where we're having these mentors come back. So with AmeriCorps, we were lucky in that they were able to really focus on the career and college readiness piece of the program, and really looking at sustainability. How do we sustain this program that was started in 1998, based on grant funding? We now have state funding, but at the very beginning, it was really based on this grant funding. So it was kind of the ebb and flow of, we're in this developing of this program, are we gonna have funding? What does that funding look like? What is our staff? What is our capacity? So during the time that I was with the Aspire program, we were able to grow the program from about 42 sites to over 160. And we call them sites because what happened with AmeriCorps is that they were able to reach down into the middle school level, which we knew was important because planting that seed at an early age is essential in getting students excited about their future. They're, at that age, are thinking, I'm gonna be a doctor, I'm gonna be an astronaut. I'm gonna be an aeronautical engineer. All of these really big career and exciting things that they wanna do. But research shows that as they get into high school, that starts to change. And they're not really thinking about that anymore. So planting that seed in middle school was really important. So our AmeriCorps members were able to go into the middle school, participate in 8th grade parent night, do some peer mentoring, and talk to those students. And then on the flip side, they were able to get into the colleges. So where most of their students were going in their local communities, taking those students onto the campus, maybe being able to sit in a classroom and see what that's all about. So in 2009, when our AmeriCorps grant went away, and it was a good reason, it's because our program was sustainable, as far as AmeriCorps thought. So they said, you know what, you've created a sustainable program, we can't give you AmeriCorps anymore. Well, the good news is that at that point, the state funding had kicked in, so our program was official. We had the opportunity at that time to apply for a grant. And I tell you this just to talk about kind of the ebb and flow and the development and how our mentoring program kind of came about and the things that we dealt with as we went along. So we applied for a grant to start our middle school program, and we switched it so it wasn't a one-on-one mentoring program anymore, but we looked at group mentoring. How do we work in a classroom? How do we bring an activity that we can engage all of the students in and bring our volunteer mentors in to work with those students? So we found that group activities were really good. One that I was able to experience, it was so cute, going into the middle school, and there were these tables of all these middle school students, and oh, it was so rowdy. It was so rowdy. Going in there, and they're sitting down with these magazines, making collages on, what do I want to be when I grow up? So looking through, and I went and was able to talk to different students at the different tables. And I was at one where there were these 3 boys, and I'm like, so what are you guys thinking about? What do you want to do after high school? And they were like, oh, I'm going to OSU, I'm going to be an ophthalmologist. And I said, wow, that's really cool. And then I found out from the coordinator of that program that they were not first-generation college students. They had parents that had all gone to college. So these boys were on it. They knew exactly where they were headed. And then I looked over, and I noticed that there was this boy sitting at a table all by himself. And so, me being who I am, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go talk to him. Laura and I were talking a little bit earlier about, kind of talking to people and bringing them out and kind of not calling them out, but saying, hey, what are you doing? Let's get you participating. Let's get you going. So I went and I sat down to him, and he was kind of like, oh, crap. And he looked back down at the table at what he was doing. I didn't leave. And I said, so hey, I see that you're looking at, looks like you're looking at, and I don't know the terminology, and I told him that, at these construction equipment, big things that dig dirt. And he was kind of like, wow, you're not very smart. But so we're talking about that. And I said, so you like big equipment? Do you want to drive them? Do you want to dig dirt? What do you want to do? He's like, well, I like tanks. No eye contact at all, just looking down. So I started pulling some magazines, and I started looking through them with him. And I said, okay, let's look and see if we can find something about tanks. So he started talking to me, and towards the end of that time with him, he actually started looking at me. I wish I could have continued working with him. He was on the coast. It wasn't an opportunity that I had, but I really believe that mentoring is planting seeds. And I really hope that I was able to plant a seed with this 8th grader that day. And just to see him kind of wake up and talk to me and engage with me and know that I was paying attention to him, even though I could have been at any of those tables talking to the more outgoing groups that are like, yeah, what are we gonna do? Let's get this, what are you doing? And really excited about it. So I really think that mentoring is about planting seeds. I have a story I'm gonna share with you towards the end that is another seed story and planting that seed and what does that look like. So it's really important, I think, for the Aspire program to start in middle school, transferring then that transition to high school. During that time, we also were able to, the same grant, apply to do some e-mentoring. And I talked to some of you earlier today before we started, and some of you were doing e-mentoring, some kind of, whether it's WebEx, maybe it's texting, maybe it's email. So we were able to pilot an e-mentoring program, and expand kind of our horizon. So we're not just working with traditional high schools, but looking at what does e-mentoring look like and working with non-traditional students. We still noticed a gap, though. We were still missing that college piece. So then we were able to apply for another grant that Kristen and Gary are going to talk about, but to get into the colleges. So working with community colleges, working with those students, they have some same concerns, some same questions about what am I going to do when I graduate? How do I deal with financial aid? I failed a class. What do I do? I need to appeal financial aid, or I'm having issues with admissions. Just not having that confidence to move forward. So we started our college program, but we still noticed a gap, and that gap was in the summer. And I don't know if you guys have heard about summer melt, but a few years ago, some national research came out that 42% of students, mainly underserved youth, graduate from high school, have paid a deposit to go to college, have actually enrolled, but then don't show up that first day of school. 42% of students. That number is huge. So I'm happy that Oregon is having conversations about summer bridge programs, about summer melt. What do we do? Creating camps, the Aspire program that they're going to talk about. So we were able to create a summer bridge program a few years ago. So now we have that amazing continuum from middle school to college, working with high schools, non-traditional, community-based organizations, college, and who knows what goes from there. So Oregon talks a lot about that P through 20 continuum, that pipeline of how do we start working in early education and then follow these students and work with them and have services and supports until they hopefully complete their post-secondary education or their training or whatever that looks like for them. What I really want you to take from this is about adaptability, about flexibility, about innovation, about investment, thinking outside of the box. There were times when we didn't know what our staffing was going to look like. We had these amazing AmeriCorps members doing all of this work around the state, and then at one point, our staff was dropped down to 3 people. One of them was half-time. Like, are you kidding me? We have, at that point, I don't know, over 100 sites. What do we do with that? We can't drop them. We can't stop serving students. So what do we do? So with us, it was really an ebb and flow. And I think that even transfers into the work that I'm doing now with Reach Higher, with C3, with college and career readiness. So I'm giving you really a high-level overview right now, and I'm going to kind of funnel down today about what's happening across the state, how Oregon is connected to work that's happening in the nation, and then bring it down a little bit closer to home, hopefully on things that you can walk away with and take some tools and resources with you. So Reach Higher, really quickly, if you're not familiar with it, was an initiative of Michelle Obama, and it was from 2014. And she really wanted to look at the role of high school counselors to empower them. I don't know how familiar you are with the role of high school counselors, but traditionally, they did a lot around college and career readiness. The counselor to student ratio in Oregon is 1 to 602, but a lot of our schools don't even have a counselor. So in our rural areas, they might not have that role at all. So it's great to empower our counselors, but in Oregon, that community is so much bigger than counselors. In the high schools, we have librarians who are working in college and career readiness and mentoring kids. We have college and career readiness teams. There might be teachers, maybe the superintendent. And then coming into at the college level, where does a college level fit in if you're just focused on school counseling? You guys are all doing college and career readiness and looking at mentoring and how do you serve your students. So Oregon decided to expand it and say, yes, we're going to focus on counselors, but we're going to make it bigger. We're counselors and educators, and we're not just high school, we're K-12, and we're post-secondary, and we're on that career track. So really encompassing all of those pieces. Reach Higher is continuing. Even though the Obamas are no longer in the administration, they have brought Reach Higher under an organization called Civic Nation, and so Reach Higher will continue. And then C3, I'm going to spend more time talking about C3 later, but C3 was born about a couple years ago, and it started with conversation again with Elizabeth from OCCA and Janelle Ives from the Oregon Department of Education. And the three of us were talking, and at that point I was administering our FAFSA program. And they came to me and they said, Lori, we really have to get training and information into the hands of counselors, into the people working with students about FAFSA, about verification, about rejection. What does that look like? How do we provide training and resources? That conversation expanded, so much bigger than FAFSA. And I'll talk more about that. Reach Higher is still going strong. I don't know, did anybody go to the Reach Higher Summit in 2016? Yay. So like 6 hands, 5, 6 hands. So we had a summit that was part of C3. We call it Reach Higher. Put this on your calendar as save the date, July of 2018. We're not sure of the dates yet, but we do have a location. We're looking at Western Oregon. So the summit was an amazing 2-day event, if I do say so myself. I was one of the planners, so I don't know if I can say that, but I think it was pretty phenomenal. So it was a 2-day event, and we thought as we were talking about it, maybe 100 people will come. It's in the summer, people are off, if they have a 9-month contract, high school people might not come. We opened up registration. Within 1 week, we were at capacity of 300 people. We had a wait list of over 100 people. We're like, what do we do about this? So we contacted those people and we said, hey, if you want to volunteer, you can't have a place at the table like you guys have right now, but you can volunteer, you can come. So in the summer, in July, we had 375 people come to our summit to learn about college and career readiness, to hear about what's happening in the state of Oregon, to talk about building seamless systems, talk about career development, to talk about college aspirations, leverage resources, start developing some promising practices. And the best thing is to start working together. So I think this conference is a prime example of that, of pulling all of you together that are doing like work, bringing in, you have an amazing list of speakers today that are going to talk to you about the different aspects of a mentoring program. So that's really what the summit was about, of the tools, the resources, how do we leverage resources, how do we leverage each other and take advantage of what is happening in the state. So today we're going to talk about a little bit of career development, but again, you guys are the experts. I'm not an expert in career development. I'm going to look to all of you to contact me later and say, there's some great stuff on your website, but you're really missing the boat. And that is good feedback for us. We don't claim to be the experts. And then I'm going to share a couple examples about mentoring. You're going to hear about that all day long, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. And I debated about whether or not to talk about this guy, but I think it could be a student that's like, yeah, I got a really good job. Or, oh my gosh, I have a really good mentor, this is really cool. And then my coworker came by and like, oh, that's the Pringles guy. I'm like, really? No, it's a happy student. So whether it's the Pringles guy or it's a happy student, take your pick. So some of my graphics, I don't know, it could go one way or the other. We're going to focus on community. And when I talk about community is usually pretty small. You think of a small. When I talk community, I'm talking the state of Oregon. That's crazy, right? The huge state is one community. But I really believe that. I think that that is happening in Oregon. I think that people are starting to talk to each other and saying, we don't have resources. And if any of you know about the budget for this next couple years, it's not very happy. So how do we come together so we can keep doing the good work that we're doing? One of the ways that is happening with community, and it makes it a little bit smaller, are through what are called the Regional Achievement Collaboratives, so the RACs. And I'm going to share more about the work that they're doing. And if you don't know what they are, I'm going to talk about what they are. And then C3 is really kind of that puzzle, taking all those puzzle pieces, all of these pieces happening around the state, trying to pull those together and create that puzzle that we can all take advantage of. And then I'm going to just share really the very tip of the iceberg of some reports and tools that are available around college and career readiness, whether it's data, whether it's something you can actually put your hands on and do something with, some training materials for you, or documents that you can share with students. So Jennifer asked me to talk about kind of, again, that big overview about what's happening in Oregon and why is college and career readiness important? And I think the Obamas really started with their call to action to say, we need to reach higher. We need to help our students reach higher. We need to empower our counselors, and in Oregon, empower our counselors and educators who are working with students. So they really started with that call to action. In 2011, with former Governor Kitzhaber, he came out with the 40-40-20 goal. And I always need to read this because I can never get it perfect. So by 2025, 40% of Oregonians will have a bachelor's degree, 40% will have an associate degree or a certificate, and the remaining 20% will have at least a high school diploma. I think those are huge aspirations, and I think a lot of people acknowledge those are huge aspirations. But what happened when that came out, okay, I can't cuss, but people were like, oh crap, how are we gonna get there? You are responsible to get our students, to get Oregonians to these numbers. How are we gonna do that? So I think that was a call to action for Oregon, that people started to come together to have these conversations. And then Governor Kate Brown has stated multiple times that she wants every student to graduate with a plan, whether that's a career track, whether that's post-secondary, what does that look like? And then on the other side of that, okay, great, they have a plan. What happens? How do we accommodate that? How do we help them with their plan to get to where they want to be? Then, this is probably the driest part of the presentation, so just bear with me. But I did see people taking pictures, so it's a little bit exciting. Yeah? Not really? Okay. So the HEC, the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, was also something that came about with Governor Kitzhaber, where a whole bunch of agencies, state agencies, focused on higher education, were pulled together and merged to create the Higher Education Coordinating Commission. I think that's a really good thing. When it first happened, I wasn't sure. It really affected us in the work that we do and kind of how we do it, but I think it's pretty amazing. So it's our office, the Office of Student Access and Completion, where we're focused on direct service. So scholarships and grants, Oregon Promise, Oregon Opportunity Grant, our Aspire program, our FAFSA program, doing a lot of outreach, trying to raise awareness about how to pay for college. But then also the community colleges are within the HEC, the oversight, workforce development, post-secondary institutions, our 7 publics. So there's a lot happening within the HEC. So again, that nice collaboration and agencies coming together to start talking about what does that look like. The Oregon Department of Education is at the table. So they're focused on K-12. One of the things that they're really focused on is creating a counselor framework. They had one a long time ago. I think the last time it was updated was in 2007. So they brought a person in to work on that, and a lot of the focus of that counselor framework is around college and career readiness. I think we all have heard that when students get to college, they're kind of lost. They're not ready for the rigor, they're taking remediation classes, they don't know how to self-advocate, they're kind of just lost. So ODE is taking this really seriously and thinking about what do we need to do in our school systems to help these kids. Then the Chief Education Office, also a state agency, you may have known it as the Oregon Education Investment Board. They're really focused on policy and stakeholders. So I don't know if any of you were able to participate in the community stakeholder events that Colt Gill had around the state, where he really wanted to hear from families and students and business owners and college access professionals. What do we need to do differently to raise our graduation rates? What do we need to do differently to help our kids get to college? So I think that's a new trend in Oregon, is to not just do policy at this high level, which honestly I don't think works. I don't know if I'm really supposed to say that, but I don't think it works. And so to hear that these agencies are starting to get on the ground and ask you guys and ask our students and families, what do you need? What's missing? I think is really important. The Chief Education Office started the RACs, I believe it was in 2013. So the Regional Achievement Collaboratives, and I am going to spend more time on that, but they're really focused on collective impact strategies. They're actively engaged in educational outcomes. What does that look like? It looks different for all of the different regions. There are 13 RACs in the state, and there are 3 educational service districts that are acting as a RAC. So they're pulling together colleges, high schools, the school districts, the businesses, the community-based organizations, college access professionals, the foundations to say, we need to do something. We need to come together and we need to figure out how to help our students. And then other agencies, really this title does it a disservice because I couldn't think of a better title. But other agencies, there are so many other agencies that are stepping up for this call to action. And it's the Oregon Community College Association. It's our institutions. We have individuals who are saying, wow, I really care about higher education. I care about our students. I want to get involved in this work. So other agencies includes a huge, huge group of people and organizations. So question again for you, how many of you are familiar with the RACs, the Regional Achievement Collaboratives? Keep them up, I just want to do a scan. So like maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 people in the room. So the one thing I didn't say at the beginning of this presentation, and I want to say it now, is that I am dumping a lot of information on you. Some of you may walk away with like, oh my God, that was way too much. And some of you may say, oh yeah, I kind of knew some of that, but didn't know all of it. This is all available, will be available on our website, so you can go back and you can look at it, you can always contact me. But there's so much happening, and I think the state is doing itself a disservice because we're not talking about the work that's happening. It's great work, but we're not sharing it. One of the ways for you to get connected, to know what's happening in your region, is through your Regional Achievement Collaborative. So I highly recommend that you visit this website. Go read a little bit about how they originated, where they came from, what their purpose was. You can click on your RAC. They have all the counties listed, so if you're not sure what region you're in, you can look at the different counties that are associated with it. And then they list some of the work that they're doing, and most have a website that you can link directly to. And it's not so much if you don't have the time to get involved in the work that they're doing, but it's more that you raise an awareness about what you're doing to the RAC. Because what we're finding is that even within a community, they don't know what's happening. They don't know what college access programs are there. They don't know what's happening at the college level or at the high school level. The high schools don't know what's happening at the college level. How are they supposed to work with their students when they send them on to you guys if they don't know what programs are available to those students? There are college access programs that are happening at a community level, little awareness about those. So I highly, highly recommend getting involved in these. And the summit that I mentioned earlier, both of them, the one from 2016 and moving forward, we organize that around the RACs. So what we want are teams to come from a region. So let's say I'm going to talk about Douglas County in a little bit. So Douglas County is huge. It's down in Roseburg, if you're not familiar. They have a huge, huge region. So we asked them, put together your college and career readiness team. So bring a team of people to the summit that are going to keep this work going forward. So it's not a conference that you come to like a sit and get. I've never used that before, it's kind of fun. A sit and get. It's not about that. It's about coming, getting the tools, leaving, and doing something with it. So actually being really active in your community. So if the summit sounds like something you would be interested in, get connected to your RAC so that you can become a part of that team. Does anybody have any questions about the RACs? We're gonna have time at the end for Q&A, but before I go into more detail about one of the particular RACs, any questions? You're like, lady, it's really early. Okay, so think about questions, because at the end we will have time for questions, and I love questions. I don't know if I'll be able to answer all of them, but it's much better than standing up here yakking at you for an hour. So funneling it down even more and looking at, again, the community as a state, but then funneling it down into one particular RAC that I'm working really closely with, and that's, I'm going to call it Douglas County from this point forward, but it's the Douglas County Partners for Student Success. And they say really fast, they're like DCPSS. Like, okay, Douglas County. So they're doing some really great work there. They've been focused on it for a couple years now, really looking at who their partners are, bringing them to the table, and having some really difficult conversations. They're way ahead of so many other regions in Oregon because they're having those very difficult conversations. We don't speak a common language. I don't know, maybe you guys think so, but I don't think high schools and colleges are speaking the same language. I see a few nods. I don't think that they are. I don't think that our students and families are speaking the same language that the colleges and high schools are speaking. We all have different definitions in the way that we perceive college and career readiness, what an AP credit is, how does that transfer to this college or this college, do I get college level classes? My son graduated from Thurston High School with, something like 53 credits. It was just a huge amount of credits. Hardly any of them transferred. What? And I see nodding heads again. So you guys know that more than I do. That was my first experience with it. He's like, Mom, I'm gonna be a sophomore in college. Wow, he was shocked when he got to college and he was a freshman, and none of those credits transferred. So what's that all about? So Douglas County is having those hard conversations. And they're hard because the colleges are doing their thing and they think they're doing some great work. And yeah, they are. The high schools are doing some great work. But if they're not translating and working together, how does that serve our kids? And how discouraging when they get to college and their credits don't count, or they're taking remedial classes. How is that encouraging to them? So Douglas County, again, having those hard conversations, bringing those players to the table. They've lost a lot of industry jobs. Their kids are leaving. They don't want to stay in Douglas County. There's nothing for them. But the business owners and I think the elders of the community, they're not really the elders, but I don't know what else to call them, but the people that have been there, they want their kids to stay. So the business owners have come together to participate in the RAC to say, wait, we can create some opportunities. We can do some job shadows or some apprenticeships or get into the schools and talk to these kids. Let's get them do an internship. So the businesses have really stepped up because they want employees. So it's been a really good win-win situation. Douglas County's done a lot of gap analysis. So who are our students? Asking all of the districts and high schools across the way, along with their community college, the Umpqua Community College. Who are our students? Who are we serving? Who aren't we serving? How do we serve them? And I know you guys are going to hear more about mentoring programs and the equity lens and what that looks like. And Douglas County is really starting to implement the adopted state equity lens to think about things a little bit differently. They're thinking about their partners, they're thinking about their barriers, basically doing a SWOT analysis, which they've not done before. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And who can bring what to the table. So they've done a lot of that pre-work. Well, what came from that is that they want to create a mentoring program. Right? So they're like, okay, we need to bring more people in to talk to our kids. We don't have counselors. Maybe Roseburg High School, the biggest high school, has a few counselors. But for the most part, their high schools and middle schools don't have counselors. So they want to create a mentoring program. And the hub will be at the RAC. The RAC sits in two offices, so they have an office at Umpqua Community College and then at the Educational Service District, so the K through 12. So they're really able to bring those partners to the table and have those good conversations, and they're gonna be the hub. Well, they're starting from scratch. I wish they were here today. I told Gwen, the executive director, about it. She's like, oh my God, I'm gonna be on vacation. But she really wanted to be here to hear everything you're gonna hear today about volunteer recruitment, infrastructure, development of a program. How do we retain our volunteers? How do we train them? How do we engage the mentors and the mentees? How do we get the mentees to show up? How do we get them excited and interested in this? Who are our mentors? So they're at those first stages of having that conversation about what does their mentoring program look like? How do they start developing it? Another piece, so they're really doing that on their own. That's not something that C3 is connecting with them on. What we are connecting with them on, which I'm really excited about, is what elements are needed in a college and career readiness plan so that their students are ready for you. So when they get to your college, they're ready. So we're gonna be working with each of their high schools. Again, no counselors. Really, they don't have a lot of college level classes to offer. They don't have a lot of electives. What's gonna get those students excited? So talking with their college and career readiness teams that they're going to be putting together on what elements they think are important for a college and career readiness plan. The benefit to that is that it's not just going to be specific to Douglas County, It's going to be a model that maybe you could take pieces of, that another school or another region in Oregon could take pieces of that, and it will have how-tos and tools and resources and materials to go along with that. So instead of us continually starting from scratch, we're able to connect pieces, connect people on what's already existing, so we aren't always starting over. And maybe you guys are already far ahead and you're already leveraging and partnering, but I don't see it a lot happening in the state. A lot of us just keep starting over and starting over. How do we come together? So finally, I get to talk about C3. I mean, all that other stuff is really exciting, and I think that it landed us at C3. I think C3 is amazing, probably because I'm one of the founders again. I'm not too modest, as you guys can probably tell, but it started, again, because of that conversation that our counselors aren't getting the information that they need. So Elizabeth, Janelle, and I started talking about, well, what would that look like? How do we do these trainings? How do we do outreach? How do we get to Tillamook? How do we get out to Madras? How do we get to Eastern Oregon instead of always being on the I-5 corridor? So we were talking about it. We started talking to some of our other colleagues who are like, I want to be in. So the three of us soon were 10. Then we were 20. And now almost 2 years later, we have 50 members. We have about 20 partner organizations that are saying, yeah, let's make a difference. Let's do something to help support our counselors and educators that are doing this work. Our goals, we really don't have long-term goals right now. Even though we've been around for 2 years, we're all doing it on top of our work that we already do. So we're kind of like volunteers. So we don't have any long-term goals yet. Like, who do we want to be in 5 years? We don't know, but right now we're working on our infrastructure, membership infrastructure. If any of you are interested, think this sounds kind of cool, you want to get in on this, now is the time, because we're building it as we go. So this would be a time that you could give your input to say, oh, I think a member needs to look like this, or we need to have these resources, or this needs to be our target. So it is a true collaborative. We have not had any conflict yet. So that is one thing that we're going to work on, is what happens when we don't have consensus. So far, we've been lucky. So little minute details like that, but it's kind of like building a mentoring program. There are stages. So we had an idea, we came together, we talked about it, we started developing materials, we brought in our volunteers, so we recruited our volunteers. Now what do we do with them? We've got 50 people who are saying, well, what do we do now? So I'm going to show you some of the work groups that we have. So some of the projects that we're doing, we're working on a career curriculum where it's grades 6 through 12, but it's something that Washington worked on. They hired a contractor. We've been able to adopt it for Oregon, and we're making it Oregon specific. We'll be going out public with that at the beginning in the fall. There's good information around career development, but there's also some great information about FAFSA and planning for college and searching for college. 30 lessons for each grade level. So if a school still has an advisory, they could do a lesson every week. And it's a true curriculum of teacher, do this, student, do this, here's the worksheet. So that's one of our projects. Another project is the website that I'm going to get to in a minute. And then one huge project that we're working on is mapping, this is huge, mapping college and career readiness in Oregon. Huge. Do our students know where to go to find out about GED? They could put it in a Google search, and they might get a list of 5 or 10 links. Which one do they click on? So we're looking at this mapping so that, and it's not like a map, like a, oh, how do I get from here to Canada? But it's more of, I'm a student, I'm interested in GED, or I'm interested in community college, or I really don't know what my skill set is, where do I start? So there's a journey map for students, but then there's going to be a map of all the agencies, all of them, that are working in college and career readiness, what services they provide, contact information, how to connect with them. But then on the flip side, looking at it by topic of, I really need information about the FAFSA. I really want information about this CIS thing I hear about. What is a CIS? Or if any of you know about SALT. What's SALT? How do I get involved in the SALT program? So we're bringing it all together. So if any of you think that sounds cool, let me know, because we could use help. What's next? Fingers crossed, is our summit in 2018. We're looking for sponsors right now so that we can hold that. We think we're going to be able to do it. And our website, which I'm going to get to in a minute. So touching base on some of these reports and tools, I'm hoping that some of you have heard about them, but hopefully some of these are new to you. One of them is the CCR Academy. Anyone familiar with the College and Career Readiness Academy? One person who is a facilitator, and Gary too. So both of them work with me, at OSAC, so we're aware of it. So here's an amazing tool. We have a 2-year license. We're going into our 2nd year. Nobody knows about it. What? That's what I find everywhere I go. It's a great tool. It's modules. It's set up in a Moodle platform. There's a facilitator. Kristen is one of them. So you have a facilitator. You can take classes. You can take tests. You can get college credit for it. So I don't know how it works at the college level, if you need PDUs or how that works, but you can get those. I know we have some high schools in here today. So you can go and sign up for these classes that will be offered through next year. And it's all about college and career readiness. And it's specific to Oregon because our group, C3, and some of our other partners are like, okay, what's happening in Oregon? What do people need to know? Let's make those classes about that. So you can find out about that on our web. All of this stuff is on our C3 website. There's so many reports and tools and data, research happening in Oregon right now. So just to make you aware that there's a lot going on. Where do you go to find it? Chief Education Office, the HEC newsletter, the ODE newsletter, the C3 newsletter. Do you subscribe to all of them? Yeah, mind-blowing. It's just too much. I have a folder in my inbox that says to read, and I throw all of them in there. And I think it's like 50 unread, but then there's more that I've kind of looked at and like, oh, I need to look at this later. How do you get through all that? So one thing that we're doing with C3 is the ones that we think are pertinent and that are seasonal and really important to these kinds of conversations, we're pulling them together in one place so that you'll be able to search through them or look for specific topics. Graduation report I think is really cool. One of the reasons I really like this one, it's coming out of the Chief Education Office, and Colt Gill, I don't know if you've heard of him, he is an innovation officer. It's a new role in Oregon. He was appointed by the governor, and it was really to look at our dismal graduation rates, high school graduation rates. So he went out into the state. What, really? A state agency going out and hearing from stakeholders? So he went to all these regions in Oregon. He heard from more than 1,000 people to find out what they think. What's missing? What can we do better? He's doing another one where he's following up again to say, this is what we heard the first time around. Now we're going to hear this. Did any of you know about those meetings? Anybody? Raise your hand if you did. So your voice was missing. And I'm thinking because you heard about this, that you're the ones in the know, because you're here. So your voice was missing. So the state can do a better job. And through C3, if you're interested, you can be apprised of these things that are happening and get your voice to the table. The CCR definition is, I think, another great tool. College and career readiness definition, if we have time, I'll show it to you today, but again, it's linked on our website. It's a document that came out of the Chief Education Office, and it's an idea for us to start speaking a common language. So I hope you've heard me say that a lot, a common language. We're trying to redefine or have better definitions for the terms that we use every day. But are you using the same terms if you're at Tillamook Community College that they're using down at SWAC? Is it the same? If your student is going to go to Tillamook and you've been talking about them about Tillamook, but all of a sudden they're moving down to Coos Bay, are they still going to understand what they're getting into when they go to college? So the college and career readiness definition is to try to start creating that common language. It's written at a really high level. I don't know if it's an academic speak or if it's a government bureaucracy speak. So we've heard from teachers that for them to really be able to use this, it needs to be simplified. So we're rewriting it in basic English that people can understand. And not only that, but we're tying resources and materials and webinars and curriculum to those documents. So if you're working with a student or your mentor is working with a student that really needs to know more about how to self-advocate for themselves, That's one of the indicators in this college and career readiness definition. Where do you go for that? Is it just something you just intuitively know and you can help your mentors and say, oh, this is how you help a student learn how to self-advocate? Maybe you do. I can't. So you'll have a list of resources that you can use, whether it's worksheets or trainings for your mentors, information that you can help with that training. It's not stuff we're creating. Honestly, it's stuff that the state has created, this community that we're talking about. Not the state up here, but you guys that are actually doing the work and things that you have found that work well. We're just trying to bring it all together. And then the equity lens has been adopted by many of the organizations in Oregon at the state level. C3 is using it, and it's helping frame our services. How do we know that we're reaching all students? What does that even mean? Does it really mean all students? How do we know we're doing it? So we're asking ourselves those questions, and we have a series of questions that when we start thinking about a new program or a product or a curriculum, going through those questions to make sure that I'm not just thinking in my world of how that's going to work, but I'm thinking about other populations and other types of students that may need to take advantage of that. So using that equity lens to help our conversations, help us develop new programming. This has never been seen before. You are the very first group to see it. Here we go. So this is the new and improved, except for it's gone. Where'd it go? Here, I'll link to it and I'll just I did have it pulled up. Sorry about that. This link takes a little bit to connect, so I'll talk while it's trying to load. There we go. There we go. Okay, so if you go to our website right now, c3oregon.org, it's ugly. I can say that because I've been working on it. It's really ugly. It's green. It doesn't have a lot of information. The logo's way too big for the little frame that it's in. So if you go to it, don't think like, oh my God, what was this lady talking about? Their website sucks. We were fortunate enough to be working on a website and just talking, like groups like this about the work that we want to do. We have no money. We have no grants. The state's not giving money for C3. So talking to groups like this, and at one of them, I was talked to afterwards by the South Salem Metro STEM Hub. I might have moved the words around. And they came up and they said, oh my gosh, we have content for a website. We don't know where to put it. Can we give you $5,000? I'm like, what? Really? So they gave C3 $5,000 to create this new look and feel website. So I worked with them on the sitemap. I say but it was more, let's see, I can't multitask on this. Let's see if it's up now. There we go. So I say but I'm really the one who's kind of facilitating and pulling in members of C3 to build the sitemap. So we worked on this sitemap for over a year and really thought about what do people need to know. And that common language. You should have seen some of these headers and some of these subheaders. One of them was affective prep. Does anybody know what affective prep is? So somebody came up with that in one of our meetings, and I'm like, I don't know if anybody's going to know what affective prep is. What else could we call that? So we had some interesting titles here that really didn't make a lot of sense. So we tried to make this really user-friendly, thinking about our main audience are you guys. But eventually we're hoping that students and families will hear about it and want to go and take a look at it. It's not all populated. You will not see this yet. If you Google it, if you try to type it in. If all goes well, this will be live on July 3rd, but we know how technology works. So we'll be testing it the last part of June, and then it'll go live. It will not be full of information. This will be an ever evolving, it will never be a comprehensive website because the work that we do is always changing. With every legislative session, whether it's at the national level or the state level, that has an impact on what we do. Did we get a new grant? Oh, let's work on that. So we will keep evolving and we'll keep addressing those issues. But I do want to show you a quick little overview of the site. And Jennifer, when she introduced me in C3, she said, College Career Collaborative. That was our old name. That's what the state uses. They put college first. And our group said, no, it's really about career. A student is going to go to a career without college, or they're going to go to college, hopefully, for a career. So we put career first. We wanted to emphasize that more than the college piece. So we have the career readiness section. You see a lot of these topics today. On July 3rd, you may not see all of these. If we haven't populated content, we're going to hide those pages. But you can see eventually the different topics that we're going to be covering. So I want to show you one of the pages that has some content in there so you know what to expect. It's a list of links. It's a list of resources. We're not going to put in a lot of content and narrative about this is career development, and this is how you do assessments, and we are the experts on everything. We're not going to do that. We're going to say, here's what we've learned from you, from people doing this work, and these are the links that people in Oregon think are most important for Oregon. That's what you're going to see on here. Right now, it's just this long list of links, not really user-friendly, but it's a place for us to start. Eventually, what we're going to have here is a way for you to filter. So you could go in. I know we have a lot of career advisors, so I'm going to use that as an example. So you'll be able to go in and say, I'm a career advisor, and I talked to somebody that's doing anthropology. I think she's back there somewhere. So she's working in the anthropology department. So she's not necessarily going to be able to put anthropology, but she was talking about the department has 4 groups. And those 4 groups are pretty distinct. They might have different needs. So if she's looking at how do I engage them through a texting program, she could look at, I'm a career advisor, I'm interested in mentoring, and I'm interested in texting. That's going to pull up some resources that we have found around best practices with texting. If we know of the Aspire program doing some great work, or the Oregon Promise e-mentoring, we're going to showcase that on that page so you can read about best practices. There'll be contact information, so if you want to go and connect with somebody who's doing that work to find out what's happening in a different part of the state, or even maybe in your own region, you can do that. So you'll be able to filter. And we're also going to use a fancy word called taxonomy. If any of you are Drupal people, taxonomy is a really cool thing where we'll be able to put these into categories. So you'll be able to look by category too. So it's going to be really robust, but that's phase 2. So bear with us as we just have this long list of resources, but know that they've been vetted by people like you who are doing the work and are saying, these are the resources that I use. The news and events section is where you're going to be able to find out what's happening in Oregon. So this event, if we would have had this calendar up, Jennifer and Annie could have gone into the Google Calendar and could have put this mentoring symposium on the calendar to raise awareness. Doesn't look like they really needed to. This is a great turnout. But if they wanted to really make sure that people knew about it, they could have put that there. If any of you are going to the advising conference tomorrow, that could have gone on there. One of the RACs, Connected Lane County, is holding a Reach Higher event on Monday and Tuesday. That could have been on there. So whatever part of the state you're in, you're going to be able to go into that events calendar, see what's happening, be more aware of the things that are happening around college and career readiness, and be able to hopefully attend some events that you might not have known about before. The materials and tools section is where we are going to have things like information about that College and Career Readiness Academy. That is on the Ugly Green site right now, so if you do go to c3oregon.org, I think it's under the About section, you can read information about the College and Career Readiness Academy, see the contact person if you have questions, and learn how to register and how to take advantage of those. But you'll also see there's the College and Career Readiness definition that I was talking about, as well as the equity lens. So if those are not familiar to you, you can go and look at those, look at the history, who's using them, kind of where they've come from. And I actually wanted to show you, so there's a search function here that works pretty well. I've tested it a little bit, it works pretty well. But just scroll down a little bit to give you an idea of what this looks like. This star here is that journey map I was talking about. So if somebody comes to the site and really doesn't know what they're looking for, none of these really resonate with them, any of the subheaders or the headers, then clicking on Start Here will come up with that journey map and has all of these things. I want to do this, I want to do this, maybe I want to do this, or I want to do this, and then it'll link to those areas. And then if you have questions or you want to get involved, you can click on Contact Us. See, that's part of the ugly green. That won't be there. This is a beta site. It's the right word, right? Beta? Okay, so here's, I think, the most important page on the whole site. You might disagree, but how do I get involved? So if I want to be a part of C3, if I want my voice at the statewide conversation, how do I get involved? You just click Contact Us and say you want to get involved. It's really easy. You'll end up talking to me. I'm on the other end of that email right now. Eventually, we'll have more people that will help manage that. But right now, it'll be me. So if you send an email, I'll be the one contacting you to talk about what that might look like. There are lots of ways to be involved. We have quarterly meetings. We meet in Salem. And we talk about whatever our biggest priority is at the time. Right now, it's this website. So we'll have a work group at that meeting. We'll be talking about the website. We'll probably do some actual work and content building. We'll also be working on that career curriculum so that we can be ready in the fall. And we'll also start planning our summer summit. So there are ways, if you want to be a part of a quarterly meeting, or you just want to be a part of the listserv, you're like, you know what, that's too much. I have a lot of work to do. I don't have time for this. You can sign up for our newsletter. It comes out every quarter, and we try to keep it seasonal. So what reports are out right now? Is it FAFSA season? Is it scholarship season? What's happening? We look at some national research that's going on and throw some articles in there. It's not real long, and we have over a 50% open rate, which is pretty good for a newsletter. So we were pretty happy with that. So ways to get involved, short-term projects. So right now, the career curriculum, we want to go live in the fall. So that's a summer project. That's short-term project. The mapping project, huge. So if you think that's something you'd be interested in, want to be a part of that, that's a big project. So we're meeting about every month. We're starting to roll that out, make those links, create that map. We have work groups that meet. So one of the things that we're working on, I think I mentioned, is the infrastructure. What does C3 look like? Every week I get people that are saying, I want to be a part of this. How do I get involved? I'm like, well, right now, I'm exactly what I'm telling you guys. We need a more formal infrastructure. So if that's something you are all about, get involved. Help us build that. What does membership look like? So we have infrastructure. Also working on our publications and communications. I use Ugly, which is probably not very nice, but it's not very pretty. We have this one-pager about C3, and it's almost kind of embarrassing. I don't take it very often. You notice you don't have it. I am using it in a meeting tomorrow because I don't get to show the website or do this presentation. So I am taking it tomorrow. But if you have skills in marketing, communications, publications, please join us because we don't have anybody that can make things look pretty. So lots of ways to get involved. If it's that you want to present at the summit in 2018, let us know. If you think what I'm doing right now is kind of cool and you're like, hey, I want to be up there and talk about C3 and what this lady talked about, you could easily take my place at an event like this, where you're going and sharing what C3 is all about. So lots and lots of opportunities to get involved, whether it's a tiny bit of time or seasonal. You can say, hey, I can give you June and July right now. June's almost over. I can give you July and August right now, but in the fall, forget about it. That's totally cool. You're still a member of C3. You just can't do anything in the fall, and maybe you come back in the winter. So lots and lots of opportunities to get involved. So I'm going to go back to, my glasses need to be stronger for this. Where is it? Right there. Okay. Slideshow. Thanks for your patience. Okay, let's see. There's my cursor. All right. This is really cool, these huge screens down here so I can see the presentation. So what I'm hoping you walk away with today, and based on the hands that I saw and some of the questions I asked, I feel good about these 4 points because I think you are going to walk away with some new information. So you know a little bit more about some mentoring in Oregon. You're going to learn so much more today about that. And really the biggest focus that I talked about was that college and career readiness. As I say college and career readiness, it's still ingrained in my head. But really, it's that career and college readiness. What does that look like? How do you get involved? What part do you play in that? And if you want to play a bigger role, you have that opportunity. Information about your Regional Achievement Collaborative. If nothing else, take that back with you. Find out about your RAC. If you can't get connected, send me an email. And I will make sure that you get connected so you know what's happening in your region. But again, I'm going to say it again, but even more, that they know what you're doing. So if they have kids, if they have students going to your school and your programs, they know what exists and they have you as a contact. You've learned about C3, which I am just really, really excited about. I'm just so happy with all of the people that have come to the table to participate in the work that we're doing. We haven't advertised. We really haven't said, C3 is this, but it's so crazy. Tomorrow, I'm going to a meeting because I guess they were talking about doing some mapping work, and they're like, well, what's that C3 group doing? So I was like, whoa, really? So I'm going tomorrow to talk about the mapping work that we're doing. We have a group next week, Connected Lane County is calling their event Reach Higher. Well, that's stemming from the summer summit that happened. And then there's a group down in the South Coast Success, I think it's called, the RAC. They call their meeting the C3 meetings. So people know about it, they're hearing about it, they're excited, they want to be a part of C3 and Reach Higher and what's happening. And then again, that tip of the iceberg about what resources and tools are available to you. I didn't talk about very many. There's so many. So please visit our website. Know that on July 3rd, it will not be really comprehensive or robust. Keep checking back. In the newsletter, we'll have examples and ideas about what's new. And then just to leave with a thought about mentoring. Mentoring is amazing. I was with the Aspire program from 2004 and just until last October. And I think it was the most fulfilling work that I've ever done. I've had mentors, whether they wanted to be my mentor or not, found someone I kind of liked and was like, oh, hey, will you be my mentor? Or informal, where all of a sudden I have a mentor and I'm like, wow, you're my mentor. I remember one of the coolest things happened at an AmeriCorps event. The AmeriCorps program director statewide came down to talk to my AmeriCorps members, and I said, I want to introduce my mentor, Patricia. She started crying. She did not know I considered her my mentor. So that meant so much to her. And then people that I've said, I see something in you. Can I be your mentor? Or those informal relationships where all of a sudden I have mentees, which I get just as much from them as I hope they're getting from me. So I talked about planting seeds at the beginning, and I really think it is about planting seeds because I know a lot of people have planted seeds with me, and I don't think I would be where I was without some of the mentors that I've had in my life. A story about these two boys, twin boys, and they were part of the Aspire program. This was a few years ago. Lived in rural Oregon, really, really rural Oregon, homeless. They had less than a 2-point GPA. They had the same Aspire mentor, and they went every week. They were seniors. They went every week. I think part of it is that was their person. They were homeless. Every week they knew their person was going to be at the school to talk to them about their future. So they graduated, they left, and the mentor didn't really know what had happened until a few years later, those boys came back. They both had their associate's degree. So she was lucky enough to know that the seed that she planted, she got to see that bloom. She got to see what that looked like. We don't always get to see that. Aspire works with thousands of kids. We don't know what happens to them. But I truly believe with my experiences and the experience I've heard from our mentors that you guys are planting seeds and it's making a difference in your students' lives. Thanks for your time, and I think we have a few minutes for questions if you have any.
Maybe. You guys are perfect.
Nothing?
You were so thorough.
Wow. Yes! Or you guys are like so overwhelmed, you're like, oh my God, I wouldn't even know where to start. So did you guys learn something today? Did at least everybody learn something today? I wasn't asking for that, but thank you. So good. I'm glad that I was able to share some information. Visit C3 after the 1st of June. I love getting emails. In my new role, I don't get very many, so I would love to hear from you. And if you're interested in becoming involved in C3, just let me know. Thanks, everyone.
So we have a little present here for Lori and her time. And I also have to do a shout out to our good friends down south, because knowing that Lori is a duck, I knew she was...
Go Ducks! Thank you! Oh, I wasn't going to say it.
You would not want any of our OSU swag. So shout out to James from U of O alumni.
Yay!
For helping hook us up with some duck swag.
Oh, bless you, my friend.
And by the way, I was an Aspire mentor in Douglas County at Drain for 2 years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I hid that from you.
Thank you.
You so much.
You hid it from me.
I hid it.
Thanks, everybody.